that's what I like.
Hello there, everybody. Here we go again. It's Eamonn and it is Paul, and it is the things we like. And what do we like this time?
Well, actually, you've got a new shelf behind you with some things that you like, right? What you like? What do you got there?
Well, no one else seems to like them. Everybody just says I should throw them out. Well, I tell you what, see that? That is a bottle of Eric Cantona red wine from 1994.
So, well, what does that mean? He had a vineyard?
Well, they did. Manchester United did this whole line of Cantona red wines, him being fresh and all that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And they were there. That was it. So I don't know how many people have those. I've got quite a few bottles of that because in 1994 I thought this was a sophisticated thing to have.
Sure. Yeah.
Eric red wine get better with age, doesn't it?
Well, I think it depends what wine it is, because when I was a kid at home, we only had wine at Christmas. Did you ever have wine when you were a kid, or did the family ever have wine? Because that seemed to be only for the hoi polloi.
We had apple teas.
Did you? What's celebratory there? Look, push the.
There was no alcohol at our Christmas table, no.
There wasn't. See, my dad.
It's sophisticated for us.
We used to have the family. My dad's brothers would come over with their family, and to be sophisticated at Christmas, the Blue Nun or the Black Tower would come out.
Yes.
And they would there was like the guy in the Cointreau advert, just rapping in the trouble. That's Blue Nun. I don't know do they still do Blue Nun? Liebfraumilch, right?
Yeah. There you go.
You've never had that, have you?
No, but Eric, of course, most famous for what?
For I would say as a player, but are you talking about the
Kung Fu kick?
The Kung Fu kick. Were you there?
He should that day? Well, you see, really, he should have been put in jail and never sort of let out again, sort of thing. But instead, he became a complete hero. No one condemns him for it. People think he should have just kicked him harder.
But that was when the fish and the trawler quote was, right? Was that then?
No, that was after. It was after that.
Yeah, no, but I wasn't saying he was shouting it as he was actually doing his kung fu kick.
Yeah.
The fish and the trawler and follow me. And
it was his comeback when he was come back, and the press were all gathered there waiting for his pronouncement, and that was as deep and philosophical as he got.
Listen, it's funny you should mention kung fu because. And this is not set up. But look at that. Can you see this?
What's that?
Now this was from the front cover. Do you remember when you used to get comics and you used to get free gifts in them? I don't know whether they even do comics anymore and you get free gifts in them. There was a Kung Fu edition in 1974. So I was 7 and I used to get Looking regularly.
Looking.
That's it. And I still, and I've gone online and found the cover. And there, can you see that? There it is. This is on my iPad.
TV Times, or really? It was TV Times. It was ITV.
The Junior TV Times. There's David Carradine, Kung Fu. It's 1974. And see where it says, free gift.
Yes.
I wonder if I'm the only person. And the thing is, I haven't actually purposely held on to this. It just seems to, if I lose everything, Eamon, you know me well enough, I lose everything, I put a paper down, put my phone down and lose it. This Kung Fu medallion has been with me for over 50 years. And I can't say, and I think there's something, because Kung Fu was big in 74, wasn't it?
Were you a martial arts expert?
Well, I'd like to think yes, but no, I did. I tell you what I did have, though. I did have Kung Fu pajamas. So therefore, it does kind of make me a martial arts expert.
And I remember everybody went about, like, it's been working. Would you these movements? Nearly went off my chair there.
Be careful. Did he? So he walked across the desert, right? What was it? Because you'd see Master Po, the guy with the eyes. I remember that, and it would go back to the old, and then he would just walk from village to village or town to town, getting himself into some kung fu scrapes. Yeah, that was the show, wasn't it?
People along the way.
Yeah,
you always looked so quiet and whatever, and you think, don't pick a fight with David Carradine, don't do that.
Yeah, but
was there a Keith Carradine as well?
That was his brother. Yeah, Keith Carradine was a famous actor as well. So there's David, and then Keith, and wasn't his dad? There was a Carradine, wasn't there? Another Carradine?
Mr. Carradine.
That's it. Old man Carradine. So there was and also we should mention, what's the other Hong Kong thing? So you've mentioned, well, we've done the Kung Fu Kung Fu Pajamas, there's 2 other particular Kung Fu things that were big at that time.
Kung Fu.
That's it.
That was a cartoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, 50 years. That's 50 years old this year, Hong Kong Fooey. And also Carl Douglas, Kung Fu Fighting was the other one.
Everybody was Kung Fu fighting. Those cats were fast as lightning.
That's the one.
And it was a little bit
frightening. Frightening is what it was. Yeah. So that was your Kung Fu, and so that was all the Kung Fu. And he had a follow-up called Dance to Kung Fu, which never quite made it, actually.
Get out
quite
of it.
sad. Yeah. That was the
Never heard of that.
Dance to Kung Fu.
Talking about all these things today.
We're just things we like, and we like to have people that we like. I'm very excited about the guest that we've got today, though, aren't you? I mean, this is really great.
Very exciting, big time, movie star.
Shall I introduce him properly?
Please.
Was a champion schoolboy boxer. Did you know that?
He was a 60 times champion.
Darn right. One of our most successful actors. Multiple BAFTA nominations.
Mm-hmm.
West Ham's most famous fan.
Yeah.
The only person to urinate on a Cray twin and live to tell the tale.
Get out
about
of
that?
Get
the
out of
legendary, the great Ray Winstone is with us. Hey.
Bring on, thank you so much for hearing this.
Pleasure.
Yeah. And we're speaking to you internationally.
Yeah. I'm away at the moment. I've come away for a month. I'm getting ready to do The Gentleman 2. And I come away here and I eat well. I don't drink. I'm going to get myself a show. I'm getting too old now, so I can't party so much. So I'll just slow down and get myself fit.
So is it preparation, Ray, or is it just a relaxed time before it all starts getting really serious?
Well, it's preparation, really. For me, when I was younger, my preparation was, going out and enjoying myself and having a party. Because obviously you got a good job, you're going to get a few quid, and so you kind of spend it before you get the job. Now it's being 68 years of age, and I can't do that no more. So I have to, if I'm going to keep working, which I've got to do and I want to do, I've got to be fit. I've got to be fit in my head and in my body. So yeah, that's what I do now.
But Raimondo, it has all changed, and it's amazing. You mentioned The Gentleman on Netflix.
Yeah.
The way, those Netflix and streaming series have now taken over, in my humble view, from traditional films.
Yeah. I love doing feature films, but the great thing about doing something, a Netflix kind of thing or whatever it is, you get more time to kind of, I don't know, create a character. You can show much more of a story. And it's now with the way TVs are going, not in everyone's house, in most homes, it's like looking at a movie screen now with surround sound and, so it's like taking the movies into your front room, but instead of having a one-off 2-hour film, you've got 13 episodes and sometimes 4 seasons, 5 seasons, so you get to know the characters a little bit more. And as an actor, that's great because you can develop it a little bit more as well.
What did you like, Ray? We always talk about films and the stuff that we've always loved, and I'm a big fan of 60s movies, and Eamonn loves the cowboy films. I mean, did you have a favourite when you were a kid growing up?
Oh, cowboy films, yeah. John Wayne was for me. Watching a John Wayne, one of the greatest films ever made for me was, the film where he's a complete bigot in the film, and it just the way it turned on his head, but you're rooting for him. It's probably one of the only books I ever read as well. Was the Searchers?
Yeah.
What a movie that is. As a feature film, we just kind of don't make. I know I'm getting old, and people say that when they go, but we don't seem to make movies like that anymore. And then there's so much depth in it as well. Content in it.
The Duke had this phrase, Ray, in The Searchers, where he would say, "That'll be the day."
Yeah.
And that turned out, who was it, Paul, that recorded that song? That'll be the day that I die.
Buddy Holly.
Buddy Holly, yeah.
He got that title from the Searchers movie.
Did he really? Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book, Eamonn?
No, I've never read the book. I've watched it times, but never read the book.
Maybe because I'd seen the film first before I read the book, and I was on Lizard Island, just off the coast of Australia. This is a few years ago, and I had it with me. I bought it out of a bookshop. It was an old book, and they're very small chapters, which is great before you go to sleep at night. On a desert island, there's not much else to do. You ain't going to watch the telly. You'll watch the moths fly around all day long. So you get the book out, and you kind of read a chapter a night, but you could kind of smell the prairie. When he was reading it, so well written.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. It's probably the only book I've ever got through in my life. I read scripts, so I don't really get a chance to read.
In my house growing up, but my dad always had this list of paperback cowboy books by his bedside at night that he would read, and they seem to be the disposable, must-go-to things that people would have, that men would have in those days.
Yeah. Yeah, my dad wasn't one much for reading books. He would read the paper. I know Sunday morning, he used to go out early because he was up early all week. He was in the fruit game, and so Sunday morning he'd go and get the bread, very much like they do in Sicily today. There's still them old things that are happening here, which don't happen at home so much. But he'd go out and get the bagels or the bread or whatever and come back home. Mum would make breakfast, and we'd all dive in bed with Dad as kids, and he'd have the paper, and we'd be under his arms reading the paper with him, So that's kind of that's about the only book he ever read to me,
That was
right. You did the cowboy thing though, didn't you? You did the riding the cowboy with Cold Mountain, wasn't that true?
Yeah, that was a great experience. We shot that in Brasov in Romania, up in the mountains, I remember putting on the cowboy outfit. You'll love this, Eamonn, because I put on the cowboy outfit, Confederacy, with a hat on, and it bent it all back and shaped it how I wanted it to look. And I had the beard kind of like what I had now, with a moustache that came up. And all of a sudden I found myself sitting on this horse where they built this cowboy town. And I'd always wanted to do it, he's galloped down the main street shooting the guns, and they were rehearsing down the street, and I didn't know that, but I galloped down the street with the guns, and I was firing the gun with dummies, obviously. And I rode down the street. Everyone just stopped and watched me, thinking I was complete lunatic. But it was something I always wanted to do from when I was a kid, And and I don't think, and I loved every minute of it, And that, of course, was working with the great Anthony Minghella as well, which was, incredible. He was an incredible man.
Well, look, we one of the reasons we're talking to you is, because we love you. We think you're brilliant. And also we want to know what you love, what you like in life, what floats your boat.
Well, it changes, doesn't it? I'm a big football fan, very much like yourself. I guess the thing for me about West Ham is, wherever I am in the world, you pick up a newspaper and you see the result, or you can now put it on your phone, and it kind of reminds you where you come from, your roots, because I lived around the corner from the ground when I was a kid, So, yeah, that's kind of my manner. That's who I am, and that's where I'm from, and I'm very proud of that, Over the years, I suppose as you get older, your passions change, It's from family. Now my kids are all grown up. I've got a grandson. I've got grandsons, So it's kind of like you got that interest, and then they're growing up, and now my interest is kind of the land. I'm lucky enough to have a bit of land out here, and I grow olives and I grow almonds, and purely for myself. I don't sell it. It's for me and the family, and it's kind of a passion, just walking around the land, sitting underneath it, like a big old mountain dog who comes and visits me and has a walk with me, and it's incredible. You're watching eagles fly back, and you kind of, I know I sound a little bit poncy, but you're kind of getting in touch with nature again. Yes, I'm a kid who comes from a concrete city, and all of a sudden I'm kind of in love with the countryside again.
I do want to ask you about West Ham though, and your love for West Ham, and is it something that you would trade? Because I've spoken to so many actors that are into football that would trade anything to have been able to play for West Ham. I'm looking like 50 years, isn't it, since that famous FA Cup win against Fulham? I remember it like it was yesterday. But is it something that you would have always wanted to have done, even more so than what you have done, Ray?
Yeah. Without a shadow of a doubt, yeah. Score a winning goal in an FA Cup final. That would have done me.
Alan Taylor.
Yeah, well, he got 2 as well. Lucky boy from Rochdale. I'm still seeing sometimes when I go to West Ham. He's there. He works at West Ham there in one of the lounges. A lovely man, really nice man. But yeah, I think growing up, I 1964, standing at the bottom of my street, and they couldn't even afford a double-decker bus. They had a single-decker bus, and the players were sitting on the top of it. There's Bobby Moore, Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, and the rest of them all sitting on top of this bus, and me standing there with a load of other kids and mums and dads blowing bubbles, And, you, as a kid, you had a mentor, like, I guess in a way, like Bobby Moore, like he was for all the kids. It was an absolute god, and an absolute gentleman. I was lucky enough to meet him, and, you'd love to be half the man he kind of was, and is, I guess, in a way. So, yeah, to play with West Ham and to score the winning goal in the FA Cup final, yeah, I'd trade that for an Oscar, and I'd trade that for a BAFTA. Not that I've ever won an Oscar, but, you would do, without any shadow of a doubt.
I think we all have that in common. Paul's a big Spurs man.
Unlucky Paul.
Sorry, Ray. Sorry, Ray. Trying to keep it quiet for a while.
I'm going to give it, I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Danny Blanchard years and whatever, and we always have that Northern Ireland connection. Anything like Pat Jennings, oh my goodness, Pat Jennings keeper. Yeah. There's a big Spurs following in Northern Ireland, and people think Ireland is orange or green, but Ireland is red, and it's thankfully Manchester United red, and that so much has got to do with George Best.
Liverpool in there as well. There's a bit of Liverpool, isn't there?
Yeah. There's a bit of Liverpool red, a bit of Arsenal red, but it's basically Man United red we're talking about.
Was it your dad then, Ray? Was that the West Ham? I mean, it's one thing being local, but there's always the reason people support football clubs is either family. Oh, there's so many different reasons, but I guess it's family, right? Is that the reason that you're a West Ham fan? Because you never have a choice, do you?
My mum came from the West Ham area, but my dad was raised in Oxton, which is more Arsenal, which is North London. But my dad wasn't really a football fan. He was a grafter, and he was boxing. He liked boxing, and he was a boxer himself. So really, football to him wasn't a big thing. Although he knew I loved it, and he'd take me. I'd end up going to England games. He'd get tickets for England games from mates that he knew, and we'd go over to West Ham. We eventually moved over to North London because he had a couple of shops over there, and he took me to because we're on a Saturday, he'd get me tickets and send me off, and I'd go and watch Tottenham, and I stood that a couple of times, and I didn't heard from me, but he was good mates with Jimmy Robinson, who used to play for Tottenham, over there. But really, because I supported West Ham, Dad supported West Ham. Really, you should have been an Arsenal fan, I guess, coming from Oxford. But it was mainly me being a great fan of West Ham as a kid that the old man would take me to the games at West Ham and all that. And then as I got older, I'd be working for him on a Saturday in the fruit game. And he'd say, West Ham are home, they'd go and shoot off, go and watch the game. So me and my mate Billy Brown would take turns and who would go to the game that week, and all that. So, yeah. I
always love it when people talk about when meeting their heroes and you think of childhood heroes. And I guess people would be like that when they meet you, Ray. I mean, to be honest, but is it like that for you when you meet maybe a player that was in the team when you were a kid and you meet them for the first time? Do you suddenly become that 10-year-old again? Or is it just water off the duck's back now?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. It's certainly what I mean. I was lucky enough, as I said, to meet Bobby Moore at Wembley one night, and it wasn't in the ground in the stadium. It was before the England San Marino game. He was very ill at the time, Bobby. He was doing a radio show, and I think they were based at the Hilton, which is next to Wembley Stadium. And as I was walking through, I'd already played against him at Wembley in a charity game, so I kind of half knew him. And he stopped and he remembered my name, which is incredible, really, because he meets millions and millions of people a year, And I wasn't doing too much at the time, And he had time for you, and he was ill, and he had time, and he stopped there, and we had a chat, maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. And I thought to myself, what a lovely man. He just had time, you know, for people. And I think that was a bit of a learning curve for me, you know?
Knowing you, Ray, you have time. This is what's different about you. That I have interviewed thousands of actors in my 45 years doing what I do. And a lot of them, particularly the Americans, can be quite distant or quite false. But you are you, and Paul and I were talking about this. I mean, we had a bit of trouble setting up this link, and you bore with his, and there wasn't any impatience or anything about it. You wear it lightly. What you do, you treat it as if it's no big deal to those around you. Whereas other actors treat it as that, they are special, that the gift that they have is special. You don't make a big thing of it, but yet you're very good at what you do.
I think it takes the pressure on it. And I think a lot of that goes back to kind of that meeting with Bobby Moore in a way. And I think that's why it was quite important, that kind of registered with me, of how easy it can actually be. It's easier to say yes than what it is to say no. If someone comes up and asks you for a photograph of them, you say no, then you got to explain why you're not going to have the picture done. By the time you've explained it, you might as well have had the fucking picture done anyway, So, it doesn't matter where you are. And people are generally really, really good and they're polite. If you're sitting down having your dinner with your wife, it's very rarely someone's going to come and interrupt you while you're having a meal. They might ask you after, and that's cool. That's all right. They're fine. They only want to say hello. Thank God they don't want to come over and punch you in the side of the head.
No,
That'd be
that's
cool,
true.
wouldn't it?
From the moment you walk out of your house door, you're on duty, aren't you? Because you're known.
Yeah, and do you know what? The more you walk outside your house and you walk in the place where you live, and that people take no notice of you. It's over. It's done. You're just part of a community or part of the place you live in. I remember sitting down with Leonardo DiCaprio, and when we were working, and I was working in New York when I departed, and he said, "Oh, Ray, what you been doing? Where you been the weekend?" I said, "I went on this with the kids, and we went on this mad boat that goes out of New York, and it goes around the Statue of Liberty. It's a speedboat, and everyone dresses up in it, and they got water pistols, and they're all jumping about. Oh, it's mad. It's called the Monster or something like that. It's called, right? It's crazy, and the kids all loved it, and we all had a great day. And he said, "How?" I said, "You should do it. Look, you've never done it. Do it, Lee." He said, I can't walk around here, I said, "Why?" I said, "You live here." I said, "The more you do it, the more no one will take any notice."
Yeah.
Listen, it's a bit different with Leonardo. I understand it. And it's New York. It's probably a bit more crazier than what London is, in that way. But, if you're going to live somewhere, you want to live. You don't want to be a prisoner within the place that you live, and he was a terrific kid. He's a terrific kid, a really nice kid, But I just felt, I'm not in that league, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to live that way, that be a prisoner in a place.
Well, in that league, the thing is, you're one of the finest actors Britain has ever produced. You're known around the world, an international face and name. You may play it down, but you do big things.
Yeah, no, I love doing what I do, and and I've done some good stuff and I've done some bad stuff. But I guess it's the way I lead my life. I lead my life that I don't want to be away from people that I've known all my life, and I don't want to be away from the places that I go. I go there because I want to go there, and I don't want anyone to stop me going there. So it's only a matter of manners, and saying hello. And you're all right. After 10 minutes, they leave you alone. They leave you be, people,
Yeah.
How does it work with work, Ray? I mean, is it? We always hear that you get scripts in the post and then you decide what you're going to do, or you think I'm going to do a couple of films a year, or how does it work?
Well, last year was a disaster. We had the strike. We came out the year before on strike.
It's the writer's strike, is it?
Yeah, the writer's strike, and then the writers went back to work, but the actors stayed on strike. And over AI, this AI thing, and now I'm doing commercials for AI. And I'm going, well, what did we go on strike for? What was that all about? And and then it was, so everything you had planned to do, and it was quite a lot of work that I had to do, that got put on hold, and now there's a queue to get things made again, So that's one of the reasons that I guess The Gentleman was kind of put back, and Guy was doing other things as well, but it's so long, in between. It's a year in between doing both series. So, and then there was other stuff that I had in the pipeline, but it all got put away. So it was a kind of tough 18 months. But if I look over the space of 30 years, well, you're going to get kicked in the nuts now and then, and that kind of happens. And so hopefully this year is going to be more productive. We're starting with The Gentleman. I've got one or two other things if they come off. Of course, they've got to get a slot, and, the thing's got to be financed and all that kind of stuff. So by the time that's done, maybe by the middle of the year, end of the year, we'll be cracking on. I hope so. I like going to work, and I need
directors, Ray, that can bring the best out in you, and that you become a different person or a better actor, perhaps working under a certain director, and conversely, you can become a worse actor with a director that you don't get on with.
Absolutely. Without a shadow of doubt, yeah. It depends on the director, Trust is a big thing, with directors. And I've worked with some really good ones, I've worked with a couple that weren't that great. Very few that I didn't like, I actually like directors. I've got a lot of time for them, which is helpful. But, I think, one of my favourite directors to work with was Gary Oldman. He's an actor, but he kind of understands the working, of an actor. And and he's a really, really fine actor. So, and he's got that eye. He just had that eye and that way of getting under your skin and getting you to work the way you should be working. Yeah. I learned a lot from him, working with him.
Who does it?
Huh?
The way Clint Eastwood does it.
Yeah, I've heard he's amazing. I've never been lucky enough to work with him, but fantastic. Another one who understands the camera, understands, what an actor's job is, and knows how to put it across.
Scorsese, Spielberg. It's not a bad list, is it? Though, Ray? You may not. It's not a bad list you've got.
Absolute education, working with these guys. Really, really was, just really. Because they kind of loved you standing behind them, when you wasn't actually acting, when you wasn't on the screen in front of the camera. They kind of loved you being behind them, watching what they were doing. They kind of not showing off, but they like educating you. They like to show you what they're doing. And I found that quite fascinating, that how a movie's made, and the way with different genres, the way they use the camera in different ways. And, I kind of learned that off of them, and I learned the rest of it as I went along, just watching. I like to be on the set. I like to be there watching how they're doing it and what it's about. Because actually, there's very few conversations before you start work about the whole vibe and the whole feel of a film. It's very few directors get the time or have the time to actually sit down and explain that to you, So it's best to kind of be there, be on the set instead of sitting in your Winnebago all the time. Be on the set and, and watch it and watch how they work.
What about, you talk about being there. Why are you not in Hollywood, Los Angeles, or New York, living with them all and mixing with them all and socializing with them all?
Would you, Eamonn?
When you see his
West Ham don't play in New York or Los Angeles, Eamonn, for crying out loud.
Paul,
I will say, no, that'd be like living above the shop. Listen, I've had a great times working in Los Angeles and I love New York. New York's one of my favorite cities, and Boston, LA, I couldn't live in LA. It's constantly, even the guy who puts petrol in your car works in the industry, it's like every 2 minutes is all they want to talk about. We talk about birds and football and boxing, They talk about movies and, you know, and there's something else out there, you know. I think to be successful in what you do, you got to know what else is going on in the world, you know, rather than just, you know, wrapped up in your own little fantasy world. And, you know, it's a wonderful place. And Los Angeles and, you know, Hollywood, all that, it's a wonderful place, you know, when you're doing all right, you know. But when you're not,
I don't like this character. I don't like so and so. I don't like that person. I didn't get on well with them.
Yeah.
In our business, TV and film and things, they don't like you do. That's not a sort of frown.
No, they don't. I've upset a few people before. Not too many, but you know, I mean, why would you say you like someone if you don't? You know, other people might like. Other people might like. Other people might like them. It's just me. It's yeah. What's that, Eamonn?
So many people, you say, why would you say you like someone when you don't? But that's what the business is based on. I mean, I'm like you. I get myself in trouble because if I don't like someone, they'll know I don't like them. And there's so many horrible people that you end up people say, oh, he's lovely, he's fantastic. If they say to me, what's that Ray Winston like? I'll say he is lovely, he is fantastic, and people will believe me because I wouldn't say it if you weren't.
Yeah, but
so many who are just false.
Well, you know what? Sometimes, you know, especially some of the youngs are put in a position when they're asked these questions on the telly and they're not quite sure how to answer it, you know, because, and quite rightly so, you know, because they're burning their bridges in a way, you know. But, you know, I've seen them on shows and all. Everyone's wonderful. Everyone's lovely. No, they're not. No, you know, they're not. And you're lucky you got your own mates, you know.
You didn't like him, did you?
Eh?
You didn't like Jack Nicholson?
No, we just didn't get on, you know, and I just found him, listen, he's getting older, you know, and maybe he's, you know, there's lots of things going on with him. I didn't like him, no, I thought he was so far up his own arse, it was unbelievable, and, you know, and he was very rude. He was very rude to me. He was rude to my wife. You know, he'd have been a younger man. I'd definitely knocked him out, you know, but you got to give him because he's an older man, much older than me. And, you know, he's done it. He's fantastic at what he does. Absolutely brilliant at what he does. He's a great writer, by all accounts, so he kept telling us. But, you know, at the same time, I can't make an excuse. My grandfather was an old man, but he was a gentleman. He was a lovely man, you know. So, fuck him, you know, basically, really. You know, why should I say I like him? I don't. You ask me the question, you get the answer. That's it.
Is it all sort of fit into place the older you've got? Because the way you talk about things, the way you handle yourself and the way you are, it seems like years on, it just falls into place. You kind of know this is how I deal with people. This is because when you were much younger, did you have that? You must have really had some drive to make a success of yourself, or did it just happen as you were going along?
I was very lucky. You know, I think when you're younger, you don't realise a lot of things. You know, you're gonna have a lot of luck, and you got to want to do something. I guess when I first started, I didn't want to, and then one day I think you do something really you liked doing, like that was good, and you go, oh, something like a penny drops, or you work with someone who you learn something from, and you go, oh, I get this now, I understand it, you know. I don't think you can be taught that. I think that kind of, I'm not sure, I'm not an expert on it. All I can say what happened for me was that I was going kind of nowhere. I was going the other way. I started off in films, went to TV, went to theatre. And, you know, I wasn't kind of enjoying it. And I wasn't enjoying it because I guess I never accepted that I was an actor. You know, I thought, I don't know what I'm doing in this game. People like me don't do this. You know, we're not actors. And, you know, they're all chaps, aren't they? They're all people who speak very well. And I guess I had this kind of inverted snobbery about it, you know? And then one day I just thought, what are you talking about? And then doing Nil by Mouth with Gary, you know, those kind of social films that we're very good at doing in England, you know, the one that Stevie Graham's just done now, I've got to watch that. I haven't watched it yet, but, you know, this is what we do really well in this country when we get it right, you know. So making them kind of films like with, you know, making that one with Gary was the kind of eye opener, you know, I can do this and I ain't bad at this, you know.
And do you love it? Do you still love what you do? Or is it a job?
It depended on the job, you know. There's certain jobs you work on and you just have an absolute ball. I worked in New Zealand with an old friend, Ian Sharp. We made a film called Tracker, and I kind of fell in love with the game again. And I was just in that position where, you know, when you get tired of something, when you've been working too much, I guess, and I was getting to that place where I was going, oh, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And then I done Tracker, which never done too much business. It never done big business or anything like that. But I just fell in love with it again, and I really, really enjoyed it, and enjoyed being around the people I was working with. And it kind of gives you another little buzz. I think every now and then you have one of those moments where you go, you know, I'm fed up with this. But what else are you going to do? You know, and
Of course.
what else am I going to go and do? You know, I can't play centre forward for West Ham no more, although...
Still box, though, right?
Still the team. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to have a fight with you because you know you could knock anybody out.
Oh, no, Eamonn, I've gone at that game. Oh, no, I'm too old for that. No, I'll get
Really?
you know. Yeah. I walk into a gym, I get a nosebleed. It's ridiculous.
I believe that. I still think of my 85-year-old, I think it was 90 actually, a great uncle, and he was a boxer, and he was walking where he lived in Brighton, and these kids came up to him and tried to steal his watch. And because he knew what to do, he just smacked one of them right on the chin and laid him out. And he was 90. Never goes, right? You know that. It never goes.
See the old story.
That's it.
But Ray, that brings us on. One of the worst things, I suppose, about your job is it's great when it goes well. How do you cope, or how do you learn to cope with rejection? That, you know, you have to read for a part and someone says, we'll give it to Paul Coit rather than you. And, you know, how do you deal with being told, no, you're not good enough for this?
Well, you deal with it. You have to deal with it. It's funny today, you know, we talk about rejection a hell of a lot, you know, and how it affects us mentally and things like that. But I think a lot of people that come back are not qualified in a way. You know, there's a lot of people out there that you listen to, but there's a lot of people going on about this that, you know, telling us we're depressed. And, you know, I'm sure I've been depressed. I haven't had no one tell me that I'm depressed. You know, it's who you've got round you that pulls you back together, I guess, you know, or you snap back into reality. I don't want to belittle it because we have some problems out there, but there seems to be a hell of a lot more people with mental health issues today than there was when I was a kid. Or maybe we're just more aware of it. I don't know. I'm not the expert. Me personally, I've had my moments where, you know, rage and all that kind of stuff. But that was probably through drink and drugs and having parties. And, you know what it's like. You come down after having an heavy booze. Of course you're depressed. You got a hangover. But, you know, I just feel that everywhere I look today, we're being told this, and everyone is using that as a platform to say, what, you know, I need help. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I find it.
You're glad that you grew up in the era that you did. I mean, you're talking now about, you know, how everybody, you have an off day and they're regarded as a mega depressive or whatever. You know, I have this story that I was on board a bus going to school and the bus was hijacked, and I ran up the driveway and the president of the college was standing at the top of the driveway, and the bus was burning, and I said to him, Father, I was on that bus. It was hijacked by armed gunmen, and they got on board, and there was this massive explosion, and the bus blew up at that stage. And he was reading his prayer book. He was standing there, and I said, so Father, don't worry, I'm okay. He just said, detention. Just give me detention. Nowadays, I'm a nurse for 6 years, and you know, had only been able to go to school 3 days a week, whatever it happens to be. He just got on with it.
Yeah, I guess the argument for that is, how did it scar us? What did it make us? It made me strong. I think, things like that can make you strong. There's other people it doesn't make strong. It can affect in other ways. And so I'm far from the expert to actually comment on it, really. But I just find out there that there's all these different kinds of people that who are not qualified who actually talk about it. And all they ever keep mentioning is there's a mental health problem and, people are depressed. Well, I ain't fucking depressed, and I know when my kids get a little bit down, I go around there and I talk with them and, we have chats and, have cuddles and the next minute, thankfully, hopefully they're all right. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe there's people haven't got enough time for people anymore. I don't know.
Ray, would you say that younger actors, I don't want to sort of tar everybody with the same brush, but generally are younger actors like a different breed? Not only the fact of experience, but just the fact that they're a little more brittle than maybe they were when you were that age?
Emotionally, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But it makes them better actors. I think the younger generation, there's many, many more of them. I don't think I'd have got a look in years ago. There was no one like me years ago when I was starting. There is today. There's loads of them out there, and there's a hell of a lot of talent out there. I see I put on the telly and there's a new face all the time, and they're good. They really are good. We had to learn on the job. These kids know it before they even start the job. So I think there's more being made, but I think it's a tougher job today. We were quite lucky. People like me, Phil Daniels, and other guys and girls that were coming along at the time. There wasn't many like us of working class, the working class kind of actor. So we had not much competition, So we were lucky enough to have the time to kind of learn on the job because we never learned before. We learned by directors. Directors like Alan Clark were our teachers,
One thing I just couldn't cope with in your profession is learning lines, especially stage would scare the life out of me to go on and learn Henry V or whatever it happens to be. Are you good at learning lines?
I am. If the difference is if the script's good, it's been well written, like Sexy Beast, that was so easy to learn. It was unbelievable. Because if you missed, say a word like if out of a line, it didn't work.
Yeah.
You never changed the line in Sexy Beast. It was so beautifully written. It was bang on. Nil by Mouth was so well written, but you had leeway, play with that, a bit. And it's easy to learn because of the situation is honest and it's true, So you're in a situation where then words come out very easy anyway because you're in the moment. But when a script's badly written, impossible to learn. Impossible. You'll be all day trying to learn it. And so hence you get the pen out and you start changing it yourself to the best of your ability and say, look, I hope you don't mind. I've rewritten that bit and I've done that within the storyline. Does it work? And 9 times out of 10, they say yes. When they don't, it's tough. It's tough out there.
It's memory, though, isn't it? That's what I think, Eamonn, that's what you're saying, because we're bloody useless when it comes to remembering anything. So even however it's written. Sorry, Ray.
It's practice as well. It's like anything. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And you have your own little tricks of the way you learn something, So, it's something I've been doing for over 50 years. So if I ain't got it right now, I never will, So it's technique. It's a technique, of knowing how you go about learning your lines, But then,
and how long is it there for? Does it just go once you've actually delivered it and it's been recorded, it's all done and dusted? Yeah. It then goes, or is it always with for quite some time?
Yeah. Once you finish, switch off. Bye. Done. That's gone. I'll get people say lines to me in the street. I don't know what they're talking about, and it's lines that I'm saying. Other than like some of the classics, like from Scum and all that, I remember those. But, they were early doors. But to be quite honest with you, once you've done that job, you gotta go away. You gotta forget about it. I mean, you can't walk away. I've played pedophiles. I've played gangsters. murderers and all that. You don't want to be walking around with that in your head for the rest of the week. The wife wouldn't like that very much.
Yeah, I'm sure they don't quote those ones to you. That's what you don't want when someone comes up to you.
Oh, yeah. Do you leave a production and you've been really impressed, starstruck? But probably Gary Oldman is somebody who impresses you, and that series he does, Slow Horses, on Apple. He's incredible in that, absolutely incredible in that.
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, Eamonn. He keeps saying,
give yourself.
I'll watch it. I'll watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. He's superb. You wouldn't even. He's a filthy creature in it. He never washes, really. Basically,
that's exactly what he's really like in real life.
And one more, Ray. When you watch your film, I don't know how often you would watch films that you be in. Can you enjoy them as if you're watching a film, or are you just watching yourself thinking, "Oh, yeah"? Is it uncomfortable for you?
I think the first time you can't help. I think the first time you watch a film that you're in, I think you can't help watching what you do. The second time you watch it as a movie, you just can't help it. To be honest with you, of course, you want to get it right, so you're watching every little moment. And if you're kind of half satisfied by the end of it, then you've done a good job. You're never fully satisfied. I should have done that better, So, but the older you get, the more you go, well, it's done. That's done. It is what it is. You either like it or you don't, So I sometimes I'll go back. I remember coming home when my middle girl was, she was 17, Jamie. She was 17. And we walked in and Quadrophenia, turned the telly on, Quadrophenia was on. And it was me in the bath with Phil when we were singing Bebop Lulu and all that. And I looked at me in the bath, the face, and I looked at her and she looked like me. And she was 17 and I was about 17 at the time. And I went, oh, Christ. I went, I hope you don't grow up looking like me. I want you to look like your mum. Yeah.
She grows up like it won't be bad. It won't be bad. Ray Winstone, an absolute pleasure and privilege, and not only to interview you, but to know you. It's a great thing. And thank you for taking part in our little series and telling us about the things that you like. I mean, your gardens outside, your olive trees and all that sort of thing. And with West Ham and the things that are important to you. And thank you for sharing them with us.
My pleasure, Eamonn.
Out of the Yammers.
Yeah.
Enough already.
Ray, thank you very much. Goodbye and good luck.
Thanks, Ray.
Have a great day, boys. All right. I wish you well, Eamonn.
Oh, what a nice guy. What a gentleman he is.
Absolutely. You know what? You sounded like John Wayne when you said that.
The hell I did.
What a nice guy.
He was very like John Wayne in a way that John Wayne, people never took John Wayne seriously because they felt he was the same character all the time. No, he obviously wasn't, and Ray Winstone obviously isn't. But I think he takes it, he's very relaxed, and Wayne was a big hero to him. But I think the industry, because you're accessible the way he's accessible, he doesn't set himself apart.
Yeah,
I think you then don't get the recognition that maybe you should.
I think he is very accessible, although I didn't expect him to be quite so much as he was. I remember doing a football, there was a football thing I was hosting last year, and there was Rod Stewart and him were the two managers. I went over to Rod, how are you? And I saw Ray, and I thought, oh, I'm not sure. And I felt a bit nervous around him, whereas I didn't which was a complete mistake because I didn't expect him to be the way he was. You know what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying?
This, we were talking there about who he knows in the business and who we would know in the business and who you socialize with. And the thing that I've learned doing what I do is that you get very close to very few people in the industry, in the business. But Ray Winstone invited me one day down to his house, his back garden, for a barbecue during one of the World Cups. And he asked me to bring my lad with me, who he was 7 or 8 at the time. And we ended up playing football in his back garden or whatever. And come the end of the night, I couldn't find my young lad, Jack. I said, where the heck is he? And he's this massive back garden. And there was Jack playing football with Matt Smith, Doctor Who.
No.
So there was just him, and I thought, to this day, I laugh about him and Doctor Who just playing football together.
And does he remember that, or he had no idea at the time?
Yeah, okay, yeah, incredible. But those are the people that Ray Winstone knows that he can attract. People like him. He's genuine. There's no messing about with him. Look, you know, when you get people, what sort of trouble it is to book people for certain things, whatever it is. He was just accessible all the time to us. He was going to do this for us, and that was
and we should say that we had some technical problems, didn't we, a couple of days ago before we did it, and nightmare. And he said, look, don't worry, whatever you want, it's not a problem. Whereas other people, you go, well, that's it, you missed your chance now, boys. That's all over, no chance. But he was, whenever you want to do it. So technically, we're useless, and he was absolutely fine.
And you didn't miss your chance. You've listened and hopefully watched and hopefully enjoyed, because we liked it. We like him. We like what he does. And we like doing this, don't we, my friend?
We do. That's why. And it's things we like. So because that's what we like. And subscribe on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next time.
All the best. Bye-bye.
That's what I like.